Hello everybody, Joe from NDB Aviation, and today I'd like to talk to you all about the Thrustmaster TCA Airbus Edition Throttle Quadrant. Whew, that is quite the mouthful of words right there. Well, a few months ago I had a chance to try it out, and today I want to talk to you about my overall experience with that throttle quadrant, and my thoughts, what I thought about how it felt, how it was usable, and what you could expect if you were to purchase one. So in this video, we'll talk about my overall first impression, the design of the unit, the durability, functionality, its value at the current market price of November 2022, and my final thoughts. Now, this is going to be a relaxed review, mainly because a lot of things with the Airbus are relaxed. There's a tray table, a side stick. It's very gentlemanly. There are 2 jump seats in the cockpit. You can stand up in the cockpit pretty comfortably for even somebody like me who's 6 foot worn, which is a lot more to be said than with the 737. So we're going to take a little bit more of a relaxed approach on this review because, well, it's a gentlemanly aircraft. Nicknamed Fifi. It only yells at you and calls you names just before landing. So overall, let's just take this one down a notch and let's talk about this Thrustmaster Throttle Quadrant that's designed to look like an Airbus Throttle Quadrant. So my first impressions about the unit. Upon unboxing the unit, it was very light. It surprised me with how light it was. A lot of the plastic was well made, the overall form, function, the way everything moved. Initially, it was a very nice impression. There was nothing there that I saw that was off. Everything I'd want to see was there. Reversers, buttons, the master switches for the engines, the toggle switches to turn them on off, the overall flip switch from going from off, norm, and start. Everything's there to then daisy chain all the other components that they make to add on to make an amazing consumer grade at home Thrustmaster center pedestal to then be paired up to their joystick, which is also ambidextrous, which is an amazing functionality add-on for anything for a consumer grade flight product. I'm really interested in trying that out if I can get my hands on one of those Thrustmaster joysticks as well. But first impressions, it was great. You know, plug and played, it worked really well with Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 with a couple of caveats, but then something started to come out with me. And this is what I'm going to get into as we talk further into this review. So with the design, like I said, everything looked pretty well. It came out of the box nicely. It's a good consumer grade replica of the Airbus throttle. Now, it is a shorter throw than the actual throttle. However, it does retain the detents that you want with the Airbus style throttle quadrant that you would have if you're flying the real thing like I do, which made it fun to practice with and try out a few things while I was achieving my type rating with the Airbus. It incorporates those features nicely. It has the buttons you want for toga and go around or turning off the auto throttles, which is something you want to do. And tie-in products also work in to tie in a lot of other features that you want. And one thing though that I didn't really find all that easy was when you wanted to turn off the auto throttle, the range between idle and thrust lever climb, it didn't really sense everything perfectly. So there may have been something, maybe not with the design of the unit, but firmware and Microsoft Flight Sim 2020. I would talk about that in just a little bit as well. But the nice thing about the design was you can also undo those detents. That is the Airbus style of detent for the throttle quadrant, then making it into a normal throttle quadrant to be used with other aircraft. Now, would I say this would be my go-to throttle quadrant for everything within Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 or X-Plane 12? No, and in all honesty, I see this really being Airbus specific. Now, could you do it? Yes, you can. Would I recommend it? It's going to come down to the end user. Durability, it feels solid. I didn't have any gripes with the way that all the buttons, the functions worked. I didn't find any issues where maybe, say, a switch went too far. Everything hit the way I expected to hit for a consumer grade replica of this cockpit. And even with the reversers, with the lever switch, popping them up and then over, it felt good right there as well. It was, again, a shorter throw than the actual cockpit, but it was a great consumer grade replica. Tensioner was a little bit of an issue with the durability. I've read a couple of reviews where other people were trying to change the tension screw and they were starting to de-thread it. So be very careful if you're going to change the tension. I tried several times to make the throttles tighter. than what they were out of the box, and I found myself basically not finding any difference between tight or loose. And I was also starting to see the head of the Phillips head start to wear away. So be very careful if you're going to change any of these settings. Make sure you use a well-sized or fitted Phillips head screwdriver, or whatever screw head it does require for the one that you get if they change the screw head. So be careful what you use. Be careful with tightening. Don't go too tight, don't go too loose, and just find a sweet spot whenever you're changing the tension or you're taking out those detents for the stoppers on the throttle itself. And as far as all the other plastic parts, I see this lasting like most other units that I see. Could there be some functionality issues down the road where maybe one button or switch maybe breaks? Maybe, but I can't find anything right now that stand out for durability that would say this is going to break. I think you're at the price point it is currently at, you're buying a good throttle quadrant. So functionality, now plug and play, I didn't have too bad of an experience taking it right out of the box, grabbing that USB-C to USB-A cable, plugging it into the computer, plugging it in the back of the unit, and just going with the firmware that was already in the unit. I got about 3 hours of flight time in playing with it, doing everything I could with it in the Airbus 320, and I even matched up and tried it with the stock 320 that's in Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, and then I also tried it with the Phoenix Simulations A320 as well. There were a couple of issues that I had, some things that required some fine tuning, and later on I found out that searching Reddit, searching the Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 forums, and then also looking at it with when I tried an X-Plane, there's a lot of, or maybe not a lot, but there is some required end user work to get this to be fine-tuned to work the way you would expect it to. Because when you turn off the auto throttle and you come back and you're in between idle and the first detent, you find yourself really not getting the performance that you want out of the engines. It's not matching up the N2 or EP or whatever design for the engine parameters are. They're not matching up the way you'd really want. So I went ahead and updated the firmware. Even after updating the firmware, I still had a few issues with Microsoft Flight Sim 2020. And then I started to see how to fix it. Did I go through the fixes? No, I did not. I prefer trying to do everything within the sim versus trying to do something outside of the sim. However, I would like everyone to know that there are ways to actually fine tune it and then make it work the way you would expect it to. So don't think this is something that's broken, that you can't fix. It just takes a little bit of work to get it to be within the realm that you really want it to be in. I also tried using it in X-Plane. I, however, did not undo the detents for the stoppers on the Airbus style throttle quadrant. I just set it via the axes and I played with it there. And I did notice a few things where along the axes, it kind of threw itself further within the percentages depending on where you were. I tried this before the firmware update and then after, and they were still about the same. So be cautious, look at the fixes online. If you're buying this for somebody, know what you're getting into. But overall, it's still a great product that just requires a little bit of work. And maybe since I tried mine out, there has been a firmware update that fixes these functionality issues and then makes it work right out of the box. You just have to do that update to the firmware. So hopefully that's been done, and hopefully as a product straight out of the box, the firmware is done, it's set, and Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 X-Plane 12 is plug and play with very minimal issues. So hopefully we're at that point. It just wasn't there when I had my unit to try out. Now, for the value of this product, upon looking at Thrustmaster's website, November 2022, it's November 14th right now, the price on their website was $110 basically. I think for $110, this is a great product to buy, especially if all the kinks are worked out. Now, if you're using this for more than just Airbus applications, you might want to look elsewhere. There are cheaper products that you can get that do just as much, however, it doesn't have everything on the unit. But remember, if you're going to buy this unit, you need to make sure the profiles are set to get the maximum usage out of it. Just like a Bravo throttle quadrant from Honeycomb, you need to go in and make sure you've assigned everything that's there to then use that functionality so you don't have to use your mouse button to go drag around and turn things off or on and use it. So at $110, this is a great buy if you're an Airbus specific pilot or Airbus specific simmer. There's some work to turn it into a GA throttle quadrant, and down the line if you just want to fly fighters or other jets, just know there's some work required for this throttle quadrant. Is it something I'd recommend for people? Yeah. If for the value of $110 and then all the other things you can tie into it to make an amazing center pedestal, the value is definitely there. But I still feel this is a very Airbus specific thing. Just like it says, it's Airbus. If you want something that's going to do well for every other product out there, every other aircraft, look for the basic Thrustmaster Throttle Quadrant and side stick and all that other stuff. Or just go buy Honeycomb Aeronautical Alpha and Bravo. I know it's more expensive, but you will cover almost every gamut of aviation you want right there if you're just a general simmer or general pilot. So final thoughts. I pretty much just laid them all out through the entire video. If you want an Airbus specific throttle quadrant or ecosystem to work within, you found it. This should work. Hopefully all the bugs have been worked out. The firmware is updated. Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 has a good profile for it now. X-Plane 12 hopefully has a profile for it now, if not coming. And this would be a great thing for anybody that loves Airbus aircraft. And you should be happy with it, I think, especially at the price point of $110. But if you're trying to buy something or build a home simulator setup that will cover a range of aircraft, a range of platforms, GA, commercial jets from anywhere from a Cessna Citation or a Hawker or anything down the line, and then also getting into the Boeings, the Airbuses, Embraers, this is going to be one of those things that will work. And yes, the throttle quadrant itself is more similar to an actual commercial jetliner throttle quadrant than, say, maybe a Bravo throttle quadrant with their switches. However, the overall functionality, if you're building a general simulator setup, I would still take a Bravo throttle quadrant over this setup, because you still have to add on a lot more to this Airbus setup to get all the functionality that you get out of the Bravo. But again, if you're an Airbus specific person or you just love the way this looks and your goal is to buy this whole set and get the whole thing going, because I gotta say, I do like the joystick Thrustmaster. I really would love to get my hands on one of those ambidextrous joysticks because that's a great design cue. I think if you're going for that whole setup, then get it, especially if you have the money to do so. If you're looking to buy this as a gift for a future simmer, future aviator that wants to fly Airbus aircraft, there's nothing else out there like this. Just know that as the end user, you have some work cut out for you potentially if the bugs have not been fixed yet. So would this be something I'd recommend to buy? Yes, if you're Airbus specific. If you are a basic run-of-the-mill, I want to fly everything out there simmer, go buy a Bravo throttle quadrant. Maybe buy the side stick though. I do like the side stick concept, but get something that covers all your ranges. So Joe from NDB Aviation, if you want Airbus, this is it. If you want generality, buy something else. If you like the video, like and subscribe. If there are things you'd like me to change, let me know. I'm trying to improve. You know, I'm getting back into getting these videos done more often now, finally, that I have a little bit more time on my hands. And there are more to come. Thank you all for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy out there, and see you again real soon. Bye-bye.